Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review The Dark Knight. I don't know whether or not to call this, like, Batman The Dark Knight or The Dark Knight. I don't know. Reasonably, I guess I could kind of figure that out when I'm going to have to slap a title on here. Because I'm going to have to. I would be like wanting to just call it Batman the Dark Knight because simply Batman Begins. I feel like Batman needs to be in the title, but I'm not sure. So the Dark Knight for a lot of people. So I'll kind of see. I'll Google it later and I'll figure out exactly what the legitimate title is, and probably what year it came out because there's a lot of Dark Knight stuff that ends up being put out. So I'm gonna have to do that too. So going into this film, immediately the thing that is to have me say here is, man, this movie is so dark. That's my big massive complaint is like, man, I wish there was a lighter Batman movie. Good grief, man, like the sequel that came after this. Oh, like why do they have to keep making all these dark films? Really? I think that's a funny thing that people hilariously complain about on how Batman is such a dark character. Of course he freaking is. Like, you have a lot of people that want Batman to possibly be a much more rated R-ish like character instead of the pullback that we consistently have to have him do. Hence why you have animated movies like The Killing Joke and a lot of other stuff like the Dark Knight Returns, the Frank Miller stuff, was to go on and be emplaced in animated movies. And because people like dark stories, people like different kinds of slices and options and whatever. So really, I cannot complain about The Dark Knight because this is the one Batman movie that I wanted and not something that I deserved. I've wanted this for so long, with the exclusion of me being a fan of the Michael Keaton Batman original film, and so honestly, when this movie was coming out and they were throwing posters out where it was basically you couldn't really clearly see, like the promo posters for this film were kind of like, okay, what the is that? What is that? What is this promo poster? It looked very weird. It was like a brick wall, and then it had like uh, the black eyes, and then the makeup, and that was it. Like the Joker makeup, I think, was the only thing that was slapped onto this brick wall poster, and you're like, okay, what is this movie? Because it was kind of like a teaser poster, from what I remember. Because of course, like I was young enough to, of course, uh, be full aware of The Dark Knight when it came out in theaters. So consistently for me, I was like, yeah, like I was thinking like, you know what, Batman Begins could end this story and I would be happy. It feels full circle. Plus there's a lot of people that like certain kind of Batman films. I'm not going to get into that. That would waste too much time. And so I went into this just going like, I'm probably gonna get disappointed and keep going on and on about like, oh well, that '89 movie though. But going into this movie just blew me away. Just the big, massive scale. The only thing that I'd probably have problems with in this movie, just simply from the viewing standpoint, is, man, we have so many freaking transitions in this film. It's like cut, 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 cut. Move, move, move to this scene. Okay, we're going here now. We're in this Chinese soup kitchen somewhere. Okay, we're in like this place, and we're at this restaurant now, and wait long enough to see yourself uh, become the villain, or see the hero wait long enough to see him become the villain, and oh no. So really, I would say this movie is breathtaking. This movie is a a really great film. I think I could also like Batman Begins a little bit more than this movie. Simply because one, like, Begins is a little bit of a slower film, and like I like the fact that we had to really try and figure out a way to reinvent that character. And how we actually use Crane in this movie is really fun. So, what is the teeing up thing of this movie? As if we need to tee it up. Conveniently, this movie is also on HBO Max. HBO Max, if people don't know, because it's a Batman movie. There's very few rare numbers of them. They're not on HBO Max at this point. So, the teeing up version of The Dark Knight, I feel so weird saying this because everybody and their brother has probably heard of this film. If you have never seen The Dark Knight, man, are you massively missing out. But you would need to go and watch The Batman Begins and then go on and watch this film because, like, what are you going to do? Jump movies? Or are you going to just say, oh, like, this was my first introduction to this character because this seems like a bigger budget movie? But yeah, so the teeing up version of this movie is really just the fact that we have Batman going on and finding out that he is to meet his equal, an unstoppable force meeting an unmovable object. Where we really have supposedly set up here, which doesn't go on to the sequel of really Batman going on and finding a more complex villain than he is, and it's of course creating a new class of villainy or villain. So we, when dealing with this new class of villain, we find out that Batman is not alone. All of a sudden, we have DA's Harvey Dent that has come in and is to go and Rico case up or Rico law up some small time thugs to go on and seemingly be the White Knight to Batman's Dark Knight, and go on to try and do some good to a place that you cannot really trust the common man, because there is still that point where everybody's kind of like, man, who's going to easily get bought out here? And we see that through this film. Like, it's really interesting how we go from Batman Begins, where we have the fake Ra's al Ghul who's like, this city deserves to die. And so, in this sequel film, we of course have to go and find a villain that is to be of scale of Ra's al Ghul. And so that's when, of course, we have to do the Joker. Like, a big, massive scale of, like, a city takedown by Ra's al Ghul is like setting the bar really high for their next villain, and so in sequel you of course have to have more than one. It was really also interesting for this film because for the longest time people didn't know that Harvey Dent was going to be in this film. Like, kind of kept that like kind of tight to the vest that Harvey Dent was even going to be in this film, and then we find out while watching the film, you're like, oh, Harvey Dent's in this movie. Ah, so are they going to go to the Batman Forever route of this? Or are they going to try something different? Because we've seen, like, The Long Halloween, where a lot of these characters in this movie are to be tied into The Long Halloween. So if you haven't seen that animated movie, go ahead and check it out. you'll find a lot of that to be familiar with this. Where I think in the Long Halloween we have Dent going the exact same way he does in Batman Forever, where in this story they do something a little bit different, tweakingly, goofingly different. So let's go on. Let's just go into spoilers about this one. I think I've talked good enough about this. Definitely, this movie probably has, like, I would say this movie is epic, but still, like, to me, I would say that Batman Begins just, like, to me, just feels better. It just is to be able to complete uh, and go off to have you just watch the Michael Keaton movie, and it would feel like, all right, like I could watch like the Keaton movie right after Batman Begins, and it wouldn't feel like a huge stopping gap of whatever. But yeah, but you can watch these ones also. So with that said, let's just go into it. Let's just go into that double five because it's about that time. Let's just go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time. I'm going to spoil this movie. So, in the very beginning of this film, we of course start out with a bunch of Joker thugs who are going on and taking down Gotham National Bank. So, we have Happy and Dopey, who are, of course, coming in on this zip line to get to the roof of this bank. And so we go on here, and we, of course, are in Gotham National Bank. And so we, of course, have one guy who is to be picked up, and he is to be putting on his mask. So they're going off to this heist. And so we have the guys on the roof going and disconnecting the silent alarm, and so weirdly the silent alarm had gone into this other private number for some odd reason. So we go on, and we of course have these guys trying to crack the safe, also going and having these guys shoot one another, and after certain people are to do certain jobs. Really, the funny thing here is supposedly every single one of these Joker gang thugs that are robbing this bank are to have the name of seven dwarfs, hence why I said Happy and Dopey here. And so the last two that, of course, are to be left are to be Grumpy and the other guy who is going to get revealed as the Joker. So all of a sudden, the bank manager is going and taking out his shotgun and firing on these guys. And so we, of course, go on and have the Joker go and fire back at this bank manager, dropping him down. And so they have all these bags of money. And so now Grumpy is telling the Joker, it's like, well, did the Joker tell you to kill me after this whole thing is done? And the Joker's like, well, no. Like, the Joker told me to go after the bus driver. It's like, bus driver? All of a sudden, this bus comes crashing through this wall, taking down, of course, Grumpy. And so all of a sudden, the bus driver is to go and toss all these bags into this bus. And then Joker, of course, kills the bus driver. So we have, of course, this bank manager going and mentioning that like criminals used to have like a code or something like that, and like of course have this bank manager asking the Joker what he believes in, and so we of course have Joker saying that anything that doesn't kill him will only make him stranger. And then he goes off and reveals his mask, that he is the Joker, and he is to put I think like a flashbang or something like that into this guy's mouth, and then goes out of his way to get the heck out of there, going on and collecting all of this money that I guess he was to steal from um, Lau here, who of course is to be a part of this mob that they're gonna find out that there is to be like $680 million that is stolen from this bank, and they basically call it like loose change, or they call it like a small a small theft. That big massive amount of money is a small theft. Okay, sure. So uh, whoops. All right. So we go on here and we now have to like transition. So transition. So we of course have a guy named Cheshin. Uh, Man, I didn't see that right. Cheshin, Cheshin, sure. Who is going on and is speaking with Crane, of course, the guy that we know as Scarecrow. And so Cheshnin is to talk to Scarecrow and say that Cheshnin had received a bad batch, causing his sellers to become crazed. And so Scarecrow is to come out of his van, and it's like, well, buyer beware. Like, what do you want me to do? So we're tempted to have Sheshnin go and say here that he's tempted to just sick his dogs on these guys and take them down. And so all of a sudden we have a Batman, but not the Batman, appear here with shotguns and guns of all kinds of sorts and whatever. And so we immediately have Crane, who's like, well, that's not Batman because Batman doesn't have guns. Plus, also, he doesn't have hockey pads. So, all of a sudden, we have, of course, finally Batman arriving with the tumbler. And he, of course, is to use this thing called a pneumatic mangler that is to go and bend one of the guy's gun barrels, gun parts, that is to stop this guy's gun from firing. And then Batman goes on and is chasing after this van and is to jump onto the van and use his pneumatic mangler to go and slice through this van. But all of a sudden, Crane is to drive on and is to smack Batman from off of this van. So then Batman goes on and sees this van kind of circling down this thing here, and then he perfectly drops right on top of the van, stopping it from going. And so Batman goes on and is to take a bunch of these guys and zip tie them, both Crane and both these Batman wearing hockey pads. And so we of course have these guys going on and saying like, well, hey, like the kind of hockey pads Batman are going on and telling the real Batman here. It's like, well, hey, like we're trying to be like you. We're trying to like do good. And why are you like treating us like you're treating like these thugs here? And we have Batman who's like, well, like I'm not like you. And so Crane is like, well, I'm not sure about that diagnosis. And So Batman is just like, well, I'm not wearing hockey pads. And then he goes into his tumbler and goes off. So, speaking of going off, we then transition here uh, and I'm trying to think of all the perfect like scenes and whatever that get put in here. So we have Gordon going on back to this national bank, and so we have, of course, uh, Gordon going on talking to Anna here, or Ramirez, Detective Ramirez, and kind of mentioning all the things and setup of all this. So all of a sudden, Batman appears, and Ramirez is like, "Okay, everybody, clear out." So Batman is to use this, whip out this scanner, and showcase that these bills are all marked bills, and they'll be able to track this money. And so Gordon's like, "Yep, like if anything, uh, they're kind of thinking about all of the banks that are possibly going to be tied to the five families because they naturally assume that the Joker is going to hit every single one of these banks, and supposedly they're talking about, well, do you think he's going to hit them all at once? Because the more and more that he tries to go to these banks, the more that we're going to go and try to counter that by using stuff like SWAT or just kind of escalate things. So, like, you would have to hit these all at the same time. So, we have, of course, Batman leaving and making his way to, of course, his uh, underground underground cave because, of course, he is to sew himself up from his dog attack from earlier. So Alfred is to go and kind of look around for Bruce at Wayne Manor to find that he is not there. So instead, Alfred goes to uh, Bruce's uh, penthouse slash underground Batcave location and finds him there. So we go on and have Alfred saying, like, well, yeah, I guess instead of going and not sleeping in a mansion, you're going on and sleeping in a penthouse. But maybe when they finally get construction on Wayne Manor, like, that'll change. Uh, so Bruce is sewing himself up here, and of course Alfred is saying, like, well, hey, uh, are you sure that you're not going to make mistakes? And Bruce is like, well, that's the thing. Every time I sew myself up, I'll learn from my mistakes. So we go on and have them talk about the new DA, Harvey Dent, and whether or not he can be trusted, because we also have Batman also asking, of course, Gordon if the new DA can be trusted, because uh, Gord is saying that, of course, Dent wants to get on this action. He wants to be a part of what's really going on here. So, let's transition. Speaking of that, so we, of course, have Dent in court, and he's making his way, and he's apologizing to the judge that he's late. So, we have Dent go on to uh, go and ask Rachel, hey, are you ready for this? And are you ready for this? And Rachel's like, dude, I know these briefs backwards and forwards. Like, I don't really need you here. And so Dent, of course, is to go on and question a guy named Al Rossi. And so the guy on the other side of the table is uh, Sal uh, Maroni, or Salvatore Maroni. Again, you'll know a lot more about him once you go on and watch the animated movie The Long Halloween. You'll find out about his whole family, and you'll find out a lot of just stuff about him, because I guess they couldn't have been bothered to go into uh, uh, whichever for those stories. Anyways, pushing on. So we of course go on here, and we have Dent. That of course is to talk to Al here, and Al is going on and saying that Sal is not to be the fall guy here, or just to be some kind of like small fish. That this guy wasn't any kind of real leader here, and so on and so on. So we have Dent going and saying to treat this witness as hostile, and saying that this guy signed a statement. And so Al's like, whatever. So Al goes on and whips out this gun, and Al tries to fire this onto Dent. And Dent, of course, grabs this gun away from this guy. And so Dent turns to Maroney and says, like, well, hey, like, if you're going to kill a DA, you better go and buy American. So, of course, this is a Chinese gun that I guess just might jam at some point like it did here. So, all of a sudden they go and they arrest this guy for trying to assassinate Dent. And Dent's like, well, I'm not done with my line of questioning yet. And they're like, oh, look at that. Oh, wow. So, we transition to have Rachel and Dent after this kind of I guess this case is to be recessed for maybe tomorrow. We have Rachel going on and talking to Dent about him meeting with Gordon, and that Gordon is a good friend of hers, so be nice, like be cordial and whatever. And Dent's like, yeah. So we, of course, transition here to have immediately Gordon meet up with Dent. And so let me pause here for 1 second. All right. So Harvey's meeting with Gordon, and they're going over the whole Mark Bills situation, and basically what everything Gordon just said to Batman, and talked about the whole five families thing, the banks, and that Gordon is going to need the names of all those banks. And Dent is like, well, what are you going to do? And Gordon's just like, well, I just need the names. And it's like, well, okay, fine. Like, whatever you're doing. Because Dent is just, like, still really upset that Gordon is to have his private task force and Dent's not in on it. So now we just have it to where Dent is eventually going to get in on it at some point. So now we, of course, have, Mr. Lau going and meeting with Lucius Fox and a bunch of the chairman of the board, and Bruce Wayne, who is just kind of in his office chair. Lau was going on and talking about the business partnership that they're in, and so on and so forth. Excuse me. Which eventually just has Bruce Wayne go and talk to Fox and just say, yeah, like, let's kind of cancel the deal with this guy. Because Lucius Fox is to mention how it seems that these people's books aren't all on the level. That there's something kind of shady about it, as if they're cooking their books, and we can't really trust them. So Bruce is like, okay, well, that's easy. Cut the deal. Like, let's not do this. And so Lucius was like, well, it seems like you already knew we were going to do this. And Bruce was like, well, I just wanted to make sure that these people weren't on the level. And so, but then we have, of course, Coleman Reese. Weirdly, a lot of people were to have this kind of thought process that since Lucius Fox was to consistently call this guy Mr. Reese, which kind of sounds almost weirdly like mystery, that a lot of people, like, there's a whole thing about it where people were putting it two and two together that Reese at some point is going to be the Riddler. And I was like, okay, well, that's a little late for that. It would be interesting to see if, like, the Batman, they carried that, because supposedly the Riddler, I think, is going to be in that movie. Not quite sure. We'll see about that, because who knows with these movies. So, but yeah, so Reese here is going and talking to Lucius Fox, saying that what Bruce is kind of doing is a little embarrassing, and really, Fox is just like, well, you're not running this business, so shut the f up, kind of thing. Like, go on and just kind of look over some numbers and stuff like that, and just do your job. Like, is what I would really just tell this guy. So we transition here to have both Dent and Rachel, who are going on to, I'm assuming, dinner at this point, to this restaurant. I don't know the name of it because I couldn't have been bothered, but I know who owns it because Bruce Wayne does. So Dent, of course, is to go with Rachel, and Dent is to say that he had to go on and tell a bunch of lies, so that way they could go and get a table here. And Rachel's like, ha ha ha, funny joke. Because, of course, we have Dent also with his kind of his flipping of the coin thing, which I actually have, like, a replica, like, Two-Face coin from this movie, because that's how I thoroughly enjoyed it. I just wanted some kind of replica coin, and, like, I was like, yeah, like, because I always wanted a Two-Face coin, and I think had at some point got the Batman Forever coin, but heaven forbid I know where that is now. Man, would that be a great thing as, like, a keepsake. But, like, I think I lost it. So, yeah, that sucks. I had it at one point, the Batman Forever Two-Face coin, but I lost it. That sucked. So, anyways, moving on. So, for this film, we, of course, have Bruce Wayne appear with some ballerina named Natasha, and she's to be some Russian ballerina. So we, of course, have them sitting at this table because Bruce Wayne is to own this place, and he is to set it up for them to go on and sit together. Bruce says that they're going to put together, like, a couple of tables, but I only see a whole one. And really thinking of it, this is probably the exact same place where Bruce had gone swimming the movie before, right? That's probably it looks like the same place. It looks similar. So we go on and we have these four talking, and so, like, the funny thing is we go on and we have Natasha going and doing that whole, like, paper thing where she's like, well, maybe Harvey Dent is Gotham's Batman, or Gotham's Dark Knight. And we have Harvey Dent's like, well, I think someone would have noticed me, like, prowling the roofs at night. Someone would have noticed I would be gone during the night. And so Dawes is like, yeah, I probably would have noticed that you were Batman. So we have, of course, Bruce here, who's saying, like, you know what? How about I fund you? Like, now that we're kind of talking together and you're telling me that a hero can live long enough to see himself become the villain. Like, you know what? Like, it seems like you have something here, Dent. And you know what? I want to see if I can fund you. Like I believe in you. Rachel believes in you. I believe in you. So, like, how about we get some funding together? And Dent is just like, well, like, uh, the next time I'm going to need funding isn't all like right now. And Bruce is just like with the people I have, you'll never need a cent again, so you'll be fine. So yeah, let's do a fundraiser now to never have to give you another fundraiser again. So like I kind of quickly graze through that whole thing and cover that whole thing, but when really looking at it, like that's all we really need to cover is that kind of stuff here. Uh, so so the next thing we are to, of course, go on to cover the mob summit, where of course we are to be at this soup kitchen, well, in the back of it, and we of course have everybody who is to be a mob person in Gotham making their way to this place to go on and talk to Lau through a TV screen. Isn't that great? So we of course have Maroni here. We have Sheshnin. We of course have Gamble here, who of course is to be uh, Michael White. So we go on here, and so Lau was going and telling these guys that Lau had went on to take all the rest of their money, realizing that that the Joker was going to come after it. So he thought like the easiest thing to do was to take all of their money and bring it to a certain secret location that only he is to know about. Because they are to realize that there is to be 680 million that has been taken. So he's like, well, I'm not going to risk you guys losing all of your money. So I'm going to go on and I'm going to take it and put it into a location that only I know. And I'm going to do that without your permission. I've already gone and done it. And so, like, because Lau is going on to Hong Kong, and so he's scrambling off to some jet to get out of here, so that way he can avoid being prosecuted or be put to jail, of course. So that's all of a sudden when the Joker is to arrive and say like, well, what happened to y'all, you guys? Like, did your balls drop? Like, come on. So we of course have Gamble, who is to want to teach Joker some lessons, and so he's going on and telling people, it's like, well, hey, like, I'm setting up a bounty for this guy, this clown, and a certain amount of money if he's dead, but even more when he's alive. So I can go and I can just make an example out of him. So the Joker, of course, is to have one of Gamble's guys try to approach him, and Joker is, of course, like, hey, you want to see a trick? As we make a pencil disappear. Pow! And so we then, of course, go on and have Joker reveal from his coat as he opens it that there is a number of grenades there. So it's like, hey, like, do not mess with me. I will blow you up. Because we have consistently this thing of him having this kind of stringed pen thing from his coat consistently. So, yeah, really interesting kind of way of doing things here. And so Joker is to go on and tell these guys that they're a lot better off if they go and pay him to go and take out Batman, because the real plan should be that they need to kill the bat. And to not trust Lau, because at some point Lau is a squealer, and that he'll go on and one way or another he'll go against all of these guys, all of these people, and surefire enough that does actually happen. And so the guys go on and eventually are to say, yeah, the Joker is right, we should work with him. So we now go on and are to have, after that whole meeting, we now have it where, oh, the one thing that I did forget, we had that one moment where Dent was talking to one of his people as the bat signal was being shined, and there was a lot of people that were tempted to not go on and do any crimes tonight because the bat signal is shouting. And we had one guy who's like, hey, like, you have a better chance of winning the Powerball than bumping into that guy. As Dent is mentioned to one of his people, it's like, well, hey, like, that's the reason why we light these bat signals sometimes, is so that way people will become much more cautious and not go on and just like, maybe we'll get less crime tonight. And really, Gordon is just kind of hoping that Batman never comes for this bat signal, because maybe he's actually busy. Maybe he has a real life for once. Maybe he has something better to do with his life. So, but now we of course have Batman meeting up with Gordon and Dent here. And so now, of course, they're kind of talking it over, and Dent is desperate to, of course, get Lau back into the States. And Batman, of course, is like, well, like, if I get him back here, do you think that you can get him to talk? And Dent's like, I think I can get him to sing. So they're trying to, like, orchestrate this plan, and then Batman disappears, and they're like, okay, so does, like, Dent's like, so does he do that all the time? And he's like, yeah, he does that. So really, that's the new plan, is to basically just get Lau. That's simple enough, right? So we have, of course, while Bruce is getting sewed up here and talking to Alfred, he mentions that the suit that he has on right now is too heavy. He needs something lighter. Maybe something that can possibly go up against dog attacks. So when Bruce is going on and talking to Lucius Fox about Lau's company, he goes and gives, of course, some sketches to Fox about what he wants for changes in the suit. And of course, Lucius Fox is like, well, you want to be able to turn your head, right? It's like, well, yeah, because how many numerous numbers of these costumes, you can't actually turn your head in any of them. So we go on and we have Bruce, who makes his way back and is to talk to Fox about what they can do to try to get to Lau. And so Fox comes up with the idea of some CIA classified program called Skyhook, and that Bruce will probably have to look into that. And so we have it also where Fox to lay out the new suit and all of the bells and whistles and stuff like that, where Bruce to go on and grab one of these pieces to have these things go flying out, and Fox is just like, well, could you read the instructions before you go and, like, kill somebody by accident? So So we have that kind of fun scene, whichever. Uh, so we of course have both Bruce and Alfred kind of break down what their next plan is, what their move is, what basically their alibi is. As Bruce, of course, was talking to Dent, mentioning that he, I guess, to love ballet, and so Bruce is to go on and take the entire Russian cast of this ballet to take them on this boat, this yacht, and just have Alfred forcibly just putting suntan lotion all over all of these women. And Alfred is just getting a little irritated because he's like, man, how can you say in Russian to just put uh, bloody suntan lotion on your own body? Come on, Alfred! Like touching all them women? Come on, buddy. Anyways, so Dent and Rachel are trying to get to this one play. They're running late, of course, and they find out that the entire play has been bought out by Bruce. So Bruce is now on this yacht, kind of enjoying his downtime for a second because there is a boat coming his way. So now Bruce has to scramble to swim to this boat, to then get picked up by this boat for him to go and get into his Batman gear to make his way to Hong Kong. So while while Batman is on his way to making it to Hong Kong, we have, of course, Gamble that is to find out that someone had grabbed the Joker and had put him in garbage bags, and he is supposedly dead. So Gamble is to tell these guys that it's like, well, hey, like, I guess you're gonna get the certain price for a dead Joker, and then all of a sudden we find out that Joker is actually still alive. And so Joker goes on and is to talk to Gamble and mention about, no, I got these scars on my face. My father was a drinker, and and a this and a that and a whatever. And so we of course have it where I think this is the one where, is this the Why So Serious one? Yeah, I think this is the Why So Serious one. Why so serious? And so we go and we kill Gamble. I think we slice his face open and kill him off. And then Joker goes on and is to break a pool cue and tell the rest of the guys who were with Gamble to now fight to be the last one left alive to now work for Joker. So I covered all that, luckily. So Fox is to go on to Hong Kong to talk to Lau and kind of waste his time because Bruce is telling Fox to go on to Hong Kong, and Fox is just like, well, can I just call them to tell them that we're going to cancel our deal? And Bruce is like, no, see him in person. So Fox goes on and is to deliver his cell phone, which we find out actually is a sonar cell phone, and we'll find out the machine that is going to be tied to that later. So so Fox goes on and is to make his way to Lau and tell him, like, hey, sorry, we canceled, we're going to cancel our deal with you, because Lau was going and saying, like, well, hey, since you're now here in Hong Kong, we can continue our dealings. And Fox goes on and says, like, yeah, like, we're not going to do that. And Lau's like, huh? Like, so you just wasted your time coming here. But Lau kind of says, is like, well, you accidentally wasted my time. So, and Fox to have another cell phone that goes off, and he turns it off. He's like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize I had it off. So Fox walks out of the building with some security guard giving him his own phone. He's like, "No, I already have it." And he's like, "Okay." So he puts this back. Uh, so uh, so that covers all of that. So uh, Bruce, of course, is to go on and meet with Fox here, and is to kind of like mention the setup of things. But Fox is to mention the whole sonar gadget, and Bruce is like, okay, this is really interesting, which eventually will modify that later and find out that there's this big, massive machine that is to be just what Fox has already been doing. Because, of course, because Ruiz is to go on and like have problems with what they're doing in applied sciences, and mention that they're trying to do some kind of military cell phone thing, and they've been burning money into that. So Batman goes on and sets up this sticky bomb gun and is to start firing onto this building, and he sets it up for a couple minutes. Luckily, in those couple minutes, Batman is to go and get Lau and take him to the perfect part of the building where these explosives go off, and he is to go and fling this kind of thing in the air, which is to be looking uh, like a parachute, but it's something for this plane to go and latch onto and grab both Lau and Bruce and get them onto this plane for them to fly all the way back to Gotham, where, of course, now we have, of course, Lau, who has a paper thing on his chest that says Lieutenant Gordon, like, here is Lau, here you go. So we, of course, now have Lau, who is being interrogated, questioned, and whatever by Rachel Dawes. And so we, of course, have Lau just wanting to easily roll on everybody, like the Joker had said once before. And so Lau was mentioning that he has a large number of clients that he's going to roll on right now to get him kind of immune from all prosecution and whatever. So Rachel is trying to go on and figure like how exactly are they going to go and take on a large like a large thing like this, especially with Lau having so many clients. And Dent goes on and saying, well, RICO law, this could be a RICO case. And she's like, aha, so we can go and charge everybody for the same thing simultaneously all at once. And so supposedly they end up getting like 1,000 different people, but I think there's only 549 some odd people in one courtroom. So how many people did they actually get? Because they say, like, I think some people say like 1,000, but there's only like half of that. So anyways, so uh and so we have this judge who, of course, is hear this case out, and we go and have, of course, Dent afterwards going and talking to, I think, Mayor Anthony and Loeb, who Loeb actually was that guy from Batman Begins who was talking to Commissioner Gordon, or Lieutenant Gordon, and saying that, hey, there's no one to send because everyone on that other side where you are already at like that's all we can send. There's no one here to help you. And then all of a sudden the tumbler comes flying out and is going to help Commissioner Gordon, or in Batman Begins, and for a bulk of this movie he's still Lieutenant Gordon, or I could probably just say James Gordon because that'd be a lot easier to not have to say that title every single time, or Gordon, that would be easy. So duh. I'm just so used to calling him Commissioner Gordon from any other Batman movie I've ever seen. So we have Dent going and talking to uh, the mayor here. Really, just the mayor. Loeb is kind of in the background, but still, he's there. So Dent is saying that at some point, Dent should be kind of leery that someone is going to come after him after this whole thing is to be settled. And Dent's like, well, like, here's the thing, like, we can kind of not be able to get to the big fish, but all the little small fish like aren't going to be able to either get bail or be able to get out of jail for this. So, like, hey, we can get a ton of people in jail, and that'll work for us. Uh, so all of a sudden, we just have the mayor and we have Dent just going on and talking amongst themselves. And so all of a sudden, we go on and have the mayor who's looking out this window to just be smacked with this hockey padded Batman with Joker makeup upon his face. A guy named Brian Douglas, who is to have a Joker card that is to have fingerprints of 3 people. And so those 3 people, of course, are Judge Janet Cirillo, Harvey Dent, and Commissioner Loeb. And so we go on and we have, I think, the news releasing this video where Brian Douglas is being asked by the Joker why he is wearing a costume that looks like Batman. I'm like, are you Batman? And he's like, no. And he's like, why are you wearing that costume? And so Brian Douglas is to say that he wears it as a symbol to show people like you that he's not afraid of people like you. It's like, well. So Joker is to go on, I think around this point, that Joker is to desperately want Batman to reveal who he is to people, or he's going to start killing people every hour on the hour, I guess. And like he's a man of his word. So okay. So I was trying to think of the whole rigmarole of all this. So we now go on and we have, of course, Bruce and Alfred at their not exactly Batcave, but like Batcave adjacent. I don't know what exactly this like little this little other Batcave is. I don't know the actual saying of it, but I guess it just could be just the penthouse Batcave. We'll say that because technically there's so many underground things that Batman has. So we have these guys back here, where of course we have Alfred going on and talking about him going on and saying that there was to be this one guy he dealt with in Burma who I guess had stolen a number of rubies from a bunch of caravans. And so they were trying to track this guy down. And so at some point we had Alfred go and find some girl with a ruby the size of a tangerine. and they found that this guy, this Bernese bandit, was to go on and just throw them away, because this guy wasn't looking for some kind of payout. He was just looking for sport. He was just wanting to watch the world burn. To really have Batman understand that this guy can't be reasoned with, this guy can't be negotiated or whatever. Like, you basically have to put this guy down, or otherwise he will not stop. So, all right. So, we go on here and we have Bruce, who is to go into a building called uh, Melvin White's building, um, or apartment. And so we go on here and we have Batman finding out that there had been a guy who had been put into Arkham Asylum twice and this and that. So we find that Batman is to see that there is a number of police officers who are to all be missing their attire, and these were all guys who were. Oh my god. Um, Let me pause here for a second. All right, I was so lost for a second there. I'm like, what the is this? It's like, what is all this jazz? What is all this stuff? I'm so confused. And I figured it out now. So I was like, what is all this? What is this name here? What is this stuff? What am I doing? Where am I going? So, but I'm at the right place. I know where I'm going now, because I'm like, what? Like, is this happening this soon already? And I guess it is. So, Bruce is to go on and is to see out this window, and conveniently at this one point in time, Bruce is to have this telescope. So this window ends up quickly like opening, uh, while we of course are to have the mayor go on and do this uh, funeral for Commissioner Loeb, who had, of course, died because of being poisoned. We also had um, Judge Cirillo, who was to die via car explosion, because she was to go out and have these cops saying that nobody knows the location of where she's going. And so when the judge goes into her car, she has this paperwork that says up. She looks up as her car is to be destroyed with her inside of it. So, and the last one, of course, is Harvey Dent, which he'll take a while to get collected and whatever. So we go on here and we have, of course, Commissioner Loeb's death being this thing that is to uh, cause now the Joker with a bunch of his men being this firing squad. And so the mayor is going to say a couple words about of course, Commissioner Loeb dying. And so now we, of course, have the Joker going and shooting the mayor, and Commissioner Gordon is kind of dodging the bullet for this mayor. and he is to be said that he's dead here. That we, of course, have Detective Geralt, who is kind of checking on Gordon and saying that he's dead, which we'll find out he's not actually dead here. So, with all this craziness and all this aftermath, we have, of course, one guy who is to be Thomas Schiff, who is wearing Rachel Dawes' tag. We have Dent going on and grabbing this guy in the ambulance and wanting to get information about where the Joker is. And so Dent goes on and is to take Thomas and is to basically threaten this guy that he's going to shoot him, and he's going to have him flip a coin uh, to see if this guy is going to get shot or not. The funny thing of this coin is both sides are heads, and so like it's the trick coin of things, where we have at one point where Dent uses this coin on Rachel because Rachel had gone on to date Dent because of this coin, and then later on we have Rachel finally find out that this is to be a trick coin, and of course Dent is to make his own luck. So Thomas is to not really reveal anything really to Dent that is to be a real like worthwhile thing to know. So Batman comes in and is to tell Dent, it's like, well, hey, if anybody had saw what you just did here, all the work that you had just like did recently would all become undone. And that this guy is, of course, Thomas Schiff, and he is to be another insane guy that, of course, is to easily go and work with the Joker. So we now, of course, have to figure out a way to get the Joker now, and so we finally have it to where now Batman is talking to Dent and saying that I think it's about time that Batman is to reveal who he really is. That too many people have died while Batman is keeping his secret. And so Batman is telling Dent that it's time for them to do a press conference. So Dent goes on and is to do this press conference. And so we, of course, have Dent saying that this is the darkest before the dawn, but the dawn is coming. And everybody's going on and saying, like, this is the worst it's ever been. Numerous cops have been killed. Like, I think supposedly 20 so far have been killed. So we go on and we have Dent who's saying, like, well, like, I think we finally need to resolve this, and we need to have Batman show himself. And so Bruce just kind of starts walking out, and he's like, okay, well, and then Dent goes on, he's like, well, cuff the Batman, police. I am the Batman. So Bruce is like, huh? Like, I was gonna go on and like I was gonna reveal, like I was gonna go on and like and say I was Batman. So I think there's a big massive thing that I'm missing out about here. Uh because when was the whole banquet thing done? Um because yeah, there's a big thing here where I think I'm missing. Let me pause here for 1 second. All right, so let's do this. Let's finish up the Dent story, and then we'll go back to that banquet scene. So, because I apologize, because evidently I completely forgot about it. So let's cover that now. Like that's the whole thing about this movie is I can go on and at some point kind of cover all the Dent stuff. So let's do that. So Dent is getting arrested, and Rachel Dawes is, of course, telling Dent that, like, hey, why are you taking the rap for this? Uh, like, why are you going on and putting your life at risk? You're going to jail, so on and so forth. So, we, of course, have Dent, who is to toss his coin to Rachel and saying, like, well, hey, like, uh, I make my own luck as like tossing the whole coin. Rachel is to find out that it's a trick coin. So now let's put a pin in that and we'll go back to the banquet thing, the thing I completely forgot about. So we of course have Dent that is to make it to this fundraiser, this banquet, this whatever. So Dent is going on and meeting up with Alfred, and he, of course, is asking Alfred, it's like, well, hey, is there any ex boyfriends that I should be afraid of? And Alfred's like, you have no idea. So, uh, Dent, of course, is very scared about this whole thing, and he would much rather go on and uh, be somewhere else. So, all of a sudden, Bruce is to arrive on this helicopter with four women, and he's to come in here, and we have him have, of course, a much more grand entrance than Harvey Dent is to, of course, have. So now Bruce is to go on and see Harvey Dent. He's like, Harvey Dent, like the whole reason why we're all here. And Rachel Dawes, like the best friend that I've had forever, and so on and so forth. So Bruce goes on and to say, like, well, you know what, like at first it seems like those commercials that he was to have, like Believe in Harvey Dent, was like really corny, and I really didn't like think that I could really believe in Harvey Dent. But all of a sudden, once I started to talk to Dent and I started to talk to Rachel, like they really convinced me. They really made me start to believe in Harvey Dent. So maybe all the rest of you will believe in him too. And so we go on here, and we of course have it where this party is kicking off, and so we go on and we have Joker's men that are making their way up to get to Dent. And so both Dent and Rachel are to go off to the side here and kind of talk alone about things. And so all of a sudden, Bruce is to come and choke Dent out. And Dawes is like, what are you doing? And Bruce is like, they're coming for him. So he puts him in this little like closet like thing and kind of locks this up. And so now that the Joker is to make his way in here, kind of tossing down Detective Michael and going on and asking a bunch of people, where is Harvey Dent? Do you know Harvey? Who's Harvey? Do you know him? So, uh, Bruce is going on and taking certain Joker thugs and is to take them down and is to break their shotguns into little bitty pieces and is going into a safe room where people are like, oh, like, Bruce, you have a safe room? Let's go in there. And then Bruce just goes there alone and like, son of a bitch. So, so Bruce goes on to then change into being Batman and is to go and try to save these people here. So we have Joker going on and talking to these people, and he bumps into Rachel Dawes, and he's like, "Ah, all right." So we go on, and we have, of course, Joker talking to Rachel here, and we again get into the like, you know how I got these scars on my face. Uh, and this time around, we have a completely different story, which a lot of people are like, okay, so what is the freaking story? And so we go on and we supposedly have Joker's wife, who was to just kind of be, God, I'm going to have to hugely kind of try to figure out a way to get this story out. So Joker is going on and having the girl of his just having some problems and with smiling. And so Joker, because the girl that he was with, uh, like just couldn't smile, we had Joker who was to carve uh, these things to look like he is smiling upon his face. And so after he was to go on and do that, the woman that he was with couldn't stand the sight of him. And so uh, we go on and we have the Joker who is to put his knife, of course, to Rachel Dawes' face. And so at some point we have Batman, of course, saying it's like, well, you're going to love me. And then all of a sudden that's when we, of course, have Batman starting to attack the Joker gang. We have, of course, the Joker who's putting Rachel outside this window, and Batman is telling Joker to let her go, and Joker's like, well, that's a poor choice of words, because plop, she's going to fall to her death. Batman goes flying out to try and grab onto Rachel, and then conveniently is to basically break her fall. And Rachel, of course, is saying, like, you know what, we shouldn't do this kind of stuff anymore. And Batman's like, yeah, I gotcha. So, so now, let's go back to where we were. Transitioning and otherwise. So, as a recap, we had revealed that Two-Face, or really just Harvey Dent, was Batman. And so now Harvey Dent is to go on and be driven by this police force to make their way to arresting Dent. And so we have this long drive, and so Joker is going after Harvey Dent here in his slaughter truck, and so there's to be this one police officer looking at this truck and telling this guy to just kind of wait up as he's honking this vehicle, or honking his horn, because he's like, hey man, you're gonna have to wait as well as anybody else is. And Joker goes and shoots this guy and kills him so they could drive off. So Joker's trucks are chasing after this SWAT team here and these armored vehicles. And so Joker goes on is using all this kind of weaponry to try and take down this armored car, or to try to shoot Harvey here. And so we go on and, of course, have the guy in Harvey's car, the one guy next to the driver, who's like, well, hey, man, like, you better put the pedal in the metal and you better have some kind of moves here. And, like, oh my god, is that a bazooka? And, like, there's so much, like, side commentary, whichever, that goes on with this other guy. So we all of a sudden have Batman, of course, with the tumbler going on and taking out this garbage truck vehicle, going on, and at some point when the Joker is to have this bazooka, of course, Batman is to sacrifice the tumbler, and so Batman, because he can no longer use the tumbler anymore because that bazooka had kind of taken the tumbler out. He decides to now go on and do the bat pod instead and eject the bat pod from out of the tumbler and then self destruct the tumbler. So we have Batman with the bat pod making his way back, of course, to where Joker is at this point. And so Joker is going and desperately trying to have his men take down these helicopters by using certain kind of wires and stuff like that to rack them up. So we go on and have these helicopters crashing down and all kinds of craziness is happening. So we go on and have Batman arrive with the Batpod to go and take this semi truck of the Joker's and flip it to where it goes from like its normal driving thing to now being completely flipped. And so that, of course, is when the Joker gets out of this semi truck and he's like, "Come on, hit me." And so Batman and his Batpod is going, and he's so tempted, just like, God, I just want to hit the Joker, but he doesn't. He doesn't go on and do it, and he's like, and Joker's like, well, of course, like you have so many rules, and you think that they'll save you, and blah blah blah. So, uh, we have it here where Batman is to be taken down, and while he's taken down and some people are trying to unmask him and they get electrocuted, all of a sudden we have Gordon come in and he's still alive, and that was like the big reveal of this movie. Just like, oh my god, that was Commissioner Gordon the whole time. Oh my god. And that was like the big like oh kind of moment because they're like they can't just kill Commissioner Gordon off because Commissioner Gordon goes on to become Commissioner Gordon right after this whole ordeal is to be over, and Gordon arrests the Joker here because that's what happens. So, and Detective Garrett was to tell Gordon's wife that Gordon is dead, and so we of course have Barbara Gordon, who is blaming Batman for his husband being, or for her husband being dead. So we go on and we have Joker, who's arrested and being put into, of course, Gotham PD. So they go on and they're checking, and Jokers that really have no name, no nothing, no ID, like just like a very like custom suit and what, but there's no paper trail on this guy. There's no fingerprints. There's no nothing. So we also go on and have Joker with some kind of criminal in his prison cell where he's going on and complaining about his sides hurt and that someone was to tell him that at some point he was going to get a bright lights treatment and that he's really sick and so on and so forth, because of course he is. So we go on here and we of course have it where Joker is going to get interrogated after Gordon is to go back home and get slapped by his wife. And Gordon was just trying to keep his family safe because I guess if he figured that he would still be alive after this, then maybe the Joker would go after Gordon's family for some reason. Not quite sure exactly what that is, but that's what Gordon always would say to everybody when Gordon would would have disappeared here was like, well, I had to keep my family safe. Okay, all right. So Gordon is to talk to his wife and then talk to his son, and then go on to interrogate the Joker, asking everybody, has the Joker talked yet? They're like, well, no. So Gordon goes in there and is to just immediately just be like, well, I don't think we're going to get much answers out of you. But we find out here that Dent is to still be, of course, missing here because Dent is to go on to be supposedly sent home by these detectives, and come to find out, instead, he is to be taken and brought to this one warehouse to have these oil drums being surrounded by him, which is to be oil drums filled with gasoline. So Gordon is asking, where is Harvey Dent? And so, of course, Joker is asking, like, well, shouldn't you know? He's with your guys, right? Because none of your guys can be trusted. That's a sad thing. That really just Sal's guys can go on and buy up your people so easily because Joker is working with uh, all of those guys. Really, after the whole Rico situation, we of course had Cheshnin that was talking to Sal, mentioning that they should just go on and work with the Joker uh, because Lau had turned like the Joker had said. So might as well just work with Joker anyways. So we have Joker, and so we have Joker who's like, well, like, I can know where Dent is, but what time is it? Because he can be in one place or several. So Joker is going on. It's like, you know what? Like, I don't like. I'm not gonna just like. I'm not gonna deal with this. You know what? Like, I'm just gonna go ahead and leave. And so we have Joker's like, well, you're gonna play good cop, bad cop, and Gordon's like, well, something like that. So turn on some lights. All of a sudden, Batman is to go on and smack Joker's head, and Joker, of course, is like, well, hey, not the head, because you get all disoriented, and so you get all blurry and whatever. So Joker then attacks, or Batman attacks Joker's hand. He's like, better. It's like, so we have, of course, Batman going on and wanting, of course, information of Joker. Where is Harvey Dent? And where, of course, is Rachel Dawes? Because they're both missing. So we now have it where Joker is to reveal it's like where the address is, and for them to like have to choose between one of them, whether they're going to go after Rachel or whether they're going to go after Dent. So while they're going on and doing that, supposedly Batman is say that he's going after Rachel, but he doesn't. And so Gordon is to say, it's like, well, we're going for Dent then. So we have Joker who's talking to Detective Geralt and asking him, it's like, well, hey, like, how many men did I kill of yours? And Geralt is just like, well, 20. And he's like, 20. So it's like, well, here's the thing, like, guns are too fast. Like, knives are slow, and you can kind of savor every moment, and you really start to find out like who people really are when you're like when you're killing them this way. And so Joker is mentioning to Geralt here, like, well, do you want to know who of your friends were cowards, and so on and so forth. So Geralt goes on and is to just want to beat the crap out of Joker and say, it's like, well, like, I know that you're going to enjoy this, but I'm going to try to enjoy this just as equally as much as you are. So all of a sudden we transition to have Joker, who has a thing of glass from the one part of this interrogation room where Joker is just smacking into this glass. So Joker is in the precinct now, wielding a thing of glass to Geralt here and saying like, "Okay, like I want my phone call." So they of course give him his phone call, and the phone call is to basically blow up this precinct with Joker at some point in this building still at a safe place, and everybody else is to, I guess, get killed off or to get knocked unconscious here. But he was the only one that I guess was aware of what was going on. As the guys in the cell are seeing there's some contusion and seeing a cell phone, and then guy blows up. Uh, so now we go on here and we have Rachel and Dent talking to one another, and so uh, Rachel's saying hello, like, is there anybody here? And so Dent is kind of talking on the other end of things and kind of describing where he's at. And so Rachel is asking Dent, is like, well, is there anything sharp by you that you can kind of uh, cut your possible ropes? And so Dent goes and knocks one of these oil barrels and or one of these gas barrels and starts to cut his ropes. So that's when Dent is to start to get gas like all over his face. And so Rachel is to go on here and say that their friends are to supposedly choose between either one of them. And Dent's like, well, like, it's okay, Rachel, because they're coming for you. And Rachel's like, well, I don't want them to. So Rachel is going on and mentioning to Dent that since Dent is to want to be married to Rachel, Rachel is to finally go on and say yes to Dent here, that she will marry him. And that's kind of sad because we had the one moment where Bruce was going on and saying that Harvey Dent is to be the new White Knight of Gotham, and that the moment where Rachel was to say that uh, the world may no longer need Batman is possibly coming, with Harvey Dent now being the new Batman, the face of Gotham, and that Bruce can go on and give up being Batman and let Harvey Dent just be a person that is to go on and kind of save the city without wearing a mask. So we, of course, have Batman that goes on and grabs Dent and takes him out of this place. And Dent's like, no, no, no. Not for me. Don't come for me. And so Rachel's like, okay, great. They came for him. So all of a sudden we have Rachel's place who blows up, but Dent is now in flames and he is to make it out of his building, and half of his body is now in flames. And now, of course, he's to get that coveted Two-Face like just look about him, like we've kind of known him to have. So now we go on, and of course we have Two-Face, or really just Harvey here. At this point, we don't get the Two-Face name quite yet. We have Harvey, who, of course, is to be woken up in Gotham General, and he is to retrieve his coin, thinking that, oh, like, Rachel was to have this last, so she will probably be here soon. All of a sudden, Harvey is to then go and take this coin and realize that half of it is also to be burnt to a crisp. And he's like, no, like realizing that Rachel is dead here. So, Harvey, of course, is to refuse any kind of pain medication, even though he's in horrible pain. He's also refusing skin grafts because Gordon is to come in and tell him that. And so now Harvey is to ask Gordon what was the nickname that that Harvey was to get in IA, and we have, of course, Gordon say that it was like Two-Face, Harvey Two-Face, and so now Harvey, of course, is revealed that he is technically Two-Face here, and that, of course, this face to be revealed to Gordon. It's like, ugh. So, after that scene, of course, we have it where Bruce Wayne is just kind of conflicted about what all he has done here. We had at one moment where Rachel Dawes was giving a letter to Alfred and telling him that when it's the perfect time to give this to Bruce. And so Bruce is to go and talk to Alfred and say that technically here that he had failed. That that Rachel was waiting for him, and that Gotham's White Knight, he had burned him half to hell, and like now there's no way for Bruce to give up being Batman. And so, because we had the moment where both Rachel and Alfred were talking about the sacrifice that Dent was to make here to help Batman, and that's when Rachel was to give Alfred this note. So Alfred does not ever give this note to Bruce, but instead Alfred reads it, going on and having Rachel say that at some point she is to realize that Bruce is never going to give up being Batman, that the day where Gotham will never need Batman will never come because Bruce will just not allow it. That Bruce will always want to be Batman, and so there's no point of her waiting around for him. That Rachel is going to go on and marry Harvey Dent because that seems to be the more rational thing to do. So really, that's kind of the sad, heartbreaking letter that Rachel is to give to Alfred, that Alfred never gives to Bruce, because Bruce, of course, is asking Alfred what this note is, and Alfred says, well, it's really not time yet. So Alfred just reads it anyways. So we go on and we have the Joker who is talking to Sheshnin here, and he, of course, has Lau, and he is kind of straitjacketed on top of this big mound of money. And we, of course, now have the Joker telling Sheshnin that Gotham needs a better class of criminal, and I'm going to give it to him. And that Sheshnin should get killed here and fed to his own dogs. So we go on and we have Joker, who is just taking all the money that he had gotten from all of these guys, all of this mob, and he is burning half of it, his half. So so now we go on and we, of course, have we, of course, have the moment that starts to, like, go on to the whole Gotham General or the uh, Gotham General Hospital getting blown up here. So we're kind of gearing up for that. So we of course go on and have it where God, what am I saying here? Uh, we go on and are to be told that Joker is to blow up a certain thing of hospital, and because Gordon was going to go on and try to figure out where the Joker is to go after him, but sadly that whole thing is intercepted by Joker wanting to blow up this hospital. And so immediately Gordon is to think the one hospital that needs to be evacuated is the one where Dent is to be at, because that's the one that that they're assuming that Joker is going to go after. So we of course go on, and so uh, Bruce and Alfred are to go on and try to figure out here who can possibly have in the police precinct uh, be a guy who is to have somebody in some hospital somewhere uh, who would have all the reason in the world to go on and kill Reese, because Reese is going on and possibly going to confess on live TV here with Angle here, the news reporter, and confess about Batman, because Reese was to go on and talk to Lucius and to talk about applied sciences, and that Reese was to go on and find out and figure out that Bruce Wayne is Batman, and he wants $10 million, and he's going to blackmail, of course, Bruce Wayne. And Fox is like, I'm sorry, like, so you're accusing a very rich man that he is to be this vigilante who prowls the rooftops at night, beating up guys, and you want to do the brilliant decision of blackmailing him? Good luck with that. Like, this guy's Batman, he's gonna freaking get to you and probably kill you. So Reese goes off and is going to reveal this whole story to this news to, I guess, get some kind of money out of this somewhere. But Joker calls up this news station and is to prevent him from doing that. But on top of that, he's putting Reese's life at risk and saying that he's going to blow up a hospital if no one is to go and kill Reese here. Because why should Joker have all the fun? So we, of course, have Gordon getting to Reese as shots are being fired randomly, and so these guys are desperately trying to protect Reese here. And so we have, of course, Gordon, who's to find out that Berg Ramirez is to be one guy who is to have possible people in a certain hospital, and for Gordon to watch out. So Bruce is going on and driving in his Lamborghini then, as Alfred is to say in this movie, because Alfred is like, well, hey, you're going to take the Bat Pod, and Bruce is like, no, I need something more subtle. It's like, oh, the Lamborghini. So Bruce is going on and following this car and trying to help Gordon. And so we have, of course, Gordon trying to take this weapon away from Berg, realizing that he could be the guy that is to want to shoot Reese here. And so Bruce goes on and is to speed up to try and prevent this vehicle from from being taken down here. And so all of a sudden, Bruce is to get out of his vehicle, kind of hurt or kind of just like, my neck. And so Gordon is to go and say, hey, like, were you trying to go on and like protect this car here? And Bruce was like, no, I was trying to beat the light. And so Bruce is saying, like, should I go to the hospital? And like Gordon's like, you haven't been watching the news, have you, lately? And Bruce is like, no. Why would I watch the news? So we then, of course, have them trying to go on and trying to get to Dent and trying to evacuate Dent. And while there's to be a police officer making it to Dent's room where there's to be some nurse there, all of a sudden we find out instead that this is the Joker going and talking to Dent about how, like, uh, he's not really a man with a plan, that uh, he wouldn't know, like, he's just a dog chasing cars. He wouldn't know what to do with it if he caught it, and so on and so forth. So we, of course, have Joker saying that he has nothing to do with what had actually happened to Rachel Dawes, that there's a number of other people that were to be tied to that whole thing, and it wasn't really Joker, because Joker was at GCPD just kind of being interrogated, and so he wasn't really there. So Joker is, of course, putting a gun in Dent's hand and putting the gun to, of course, Joker's head, and also giving Dent his coin. And so Dent here is to go and contemplate whether Joker should live or die. So he flips the coin. Coincidentally, Joker is to live. So and Dent is to go on and find all the number of people that are technically to have been tied to Rachel's death, as the Joker is to go and blow up Gotham General and then to leave on this bus. So we then go on here and we transition to now Mike Engel here doing a Gotham Tonight segment, where we, of course, now have him just kind of tied upside down, and he's kind of mentioning about all the possible things that could be bombed or armed to explode, like bridges or tunnels, and that a lot of people will be surprised when they are to go to those locations trying to evacuate or trying to leave from where they are, yada yada yada. We have a bunch of people in this bar that's kind of contemplating leaving right now out of this bar, but they realize that that's a big massive mistake. So we go on and we have Detective Michael, who is to have a day off finally, and we have this bartender that's telling Detective Michael, it's like, well, hey, shouldn't you be like helping out with any of this? And he's like, hey man, this is my day off. So all of a sudden we have Two-Face showing himself here, and Detective Michael is thinking that the bartender has come back to think that Detective Michael is going to have to help him like shake it or whatever in the bathroom. So Two-Face is going on and is, of course, asking Detective Michael, like, who else was to, of course, be involved in this whole ordeal with Rachel. And so after Michael is to tell him the truth, we, of course, have really Two-Face here going and killing Detective Michael, and then going on to go after other people. So Batman is to go on and is to take Lucius Fox to show him what they've been working on, which of course is to be the high frequency generator like device, showcasing that Bruce Wayne desperately needs to use everyone's cell phone that is in Gotham to try and figure out where the Joker is. And so Fox had realized that Bruce had taken his sonar idea and made it at a bigger and wider scale of things. So we of course have it where Fox does not like this device at all, and he's like, well, hey, like, if I'm going to if this device is still going to be here, like, I'm going to resign, because if this is still in the building, like, I don't want to be. And he's mentioning that this is a lot of control for more than one person, and Bruce is saying it's like, well, like, I'm putting it into one person's hands, yours. So we have it where, of course, Fox is to go on and use this device to try to figure out where exactly Joker is. So we go on and we have Two-Face going and finding, or no, wait. I think there's also a moment where Batman is to go and take Sal and go and hold him over this building, and is to drop him. And Sal is to mention that, hey, from this height, like, I won't die from this height. And Bruce is like, well, I'm counting on it. So he drops him. I think that's right around the time where Dent is talking to Thomas. And yeah, I think it's right around that time. So we have Batman going and dropping Sal, and then Sal goes on and is, I think that's right around the time where Sal was trying to get information, but it all just really leads to Joker. And so, like, the dialogue with Sal is kind of pointless. So, so Sal is going on and driving away with his men, and we of course have Two-Face, who is to take out one of Sal's men and kind of get into the car. And now of course we have it where Two-Face is to get information from Sal and or Salvatore. And so after this is to be, like, said and done and whatever, we of course have it where Two-Face is to flip a coin because it won't hurt this guy's chances. And so it seems that Sal is going to be fine, but Sal's driver isn't. So Sal's driver is to die, while Two-Face is to be seatbelted into his car, or into this car. So Sal, I guess, is to be killed after that point. So we now go on and we transition. I think I didn't really cover the bullet fragment scene. Like, I think I just kind of skipped through that. Because when Batman was to go on to that one place that had all those cops, like, tied up, he kind of cut this one bullet and went on to shoot another bullet inside of this thing to go and figure out how to trace back a fingerprint on the Joker and figure out things, let's just say. So now, of course, we are to transition on to the ferry scene. So now, of course, we have it to where Gordon is talking to the mayor, and they're thinking about wanting to uh, evacuate a bunch of people out of Gotham and also evacuate a lot of prisoners also to kind of keep them safe. So, of course, the mayor is to agree to that. It's like, okay, this sounds great. So now we have a bunch of people on these ferries, and so uh, we of course go on here and have the whole ferry thing where the Joker is to uh, go on to this loudspeaker, and these guys are to go on and find that there's a bunch of barrels rigged to explode, and that there weirdly is to be this device that is to have this kind of key turning like thing that is to blow up a boat, but maybe not their boat. So we have Joker going on this loudspeaker for these ferries and going on and telling them that, hey, like, you guys have to decide by midnight which ferry is to live and which ferry is to die, or both of you could simultaneously blow up these ferries. So we of course have these people going and trying to vote on whether or not they should blow up the other boat, the civilian side, and the prisoners aren't thinking at all that they should go and take this and twist it and detonate this bomb, to the point of one prisoner who is going to this one guy and saying, like, you know what, give it to me. Like, I'll, like, you can go and tell everybody that I took it by force, but just give this thing to me. So the guy ends up handing off this detonator, this bomb, this whatever thing, this kind of remote thing to this prisoner. And he goes and he chucks it out this window. It's like, yeah, this is what you should have done 10 minutes ago. Because, like, we're not going to go on and kill these people. So they go on and they do the vote on the civilian side, and it seems that the vote was to say that everyone was to say, yeah, go and kill those prisoners off because they had made their choices and now they have to live with them. So one civilian guy is to kind of step up and say, like, hey, nobody wants to get their hands dirty, so I'll do it. I'll go and kill these guys. Then he goes and takes the remote, and he can't do it either. So he drops back, and so he's like, well, like, I guess we're just gonna die. So Batman is to go on and find out that the Joker is at uh, this building called the Pre-Wit Building. The Pre-Wit Building. So we, of course, have Batman that is to realize that Gordon and his men are to find that out also. So I was like, okay, that's kind of a waste. So we have it to where Gordon is to want to uh, go in and try to make his way into this building to save all these people, save all these hostages. And so Batman wants to go in there first and wants like 5 minutes, but Gordon is to only really give him 2. So Batman goes in there and is to use his sonar weapon here to realize that really the Joker gang is to be the civilians, and the civilians are to be the Joker gang. And they're like, switcheroo here. So this SWAT team is going to go in and try to take down all these Joker gang members when actually they're taking down the civilians. And so now Batman has to go on and try to not only take down all of these Joker gang members, but then also has to go on and take all the SWAT team down in one fell swoop of a thing because he needs to protect all the civilians from the SWAT team who are going and wanting to be so tempted to just take down and shoot down all of these Joker gang members. So we go on and have at one point where Batman is to possibly be arrested by the SWAT team, but Batman is to also have this plan of this one kind of trap with all of these guys being tied to this rope and being swung out of this building to be dragged out to then have them go on and be swinging onto this building. So, like, they're taken care of. Batman can go on and take on the Joker. So, Joker, of course, is to have these dogs where now Batman is to have to take care of. And so after he goes on and takes care of them, he has to go on and then take care of the Joker. So before we get to that, and before we start almost wrapping up this movie, we also have it where Two-Face is to go on and talk to Ana Ramirez. And we have it to where she is to be the kind of last person that Two-Face is to talk to here. Having Anna go and talk to Barbara Gordon and telling her that she needs to go out to this specific location because none of the other detectives can be trusted and she can. So we have Two-Face just saying to Ramirez, it's like, well, hey, like, why did you lie? Like, why did you do this? And Anna's like, well, like, my ma, she had a ton of hospital bills. And so Two-Face, of course, to flip the coin, and this time Ramirez is to live, so he knocks her out. So Two-Face is to go on and is to take Gordon's family and is thinking about which one of Gordon's family he's going to shoot, kill, whatever. So now let's go back to the pre-Wit building where Batman is fighting Joker. So Batman goes on and is to, of course, fight Joker. And so we have this kind of back and forth going on here where all of a sudden Batman is to lose control of his sonar ability. And so he can't really see what he's looking at. Joker goes on and attacks Batman, knocks him back for Joker to just kind of push him onto this one thing where it's kind of choking Batman. And so Joker is like, well, here we go. Just kind of waiting for the fairies to blow up, and nothing happens. So Joker's like, okay. And Batman's like, huh, like that just proves that people are good and no one could be as bad as you. And Joker's like, well, I have a contingency plan, and so he has this remote that's going to blow up both the boats. But we have, of course, Joker, who is to mention Batman. It's like, you know how I got these scars? And so Batman's like, well, like, I know how you got these, as he goes and uses his kind of wrist thing to go and shoot out at Joker to kind of get him to back off, so that way Batman can go on and take down Joker and then toss him off this side of this building where then he can tie a grappling thing against him and then just kind of rope him upside down, where we of course have the Joker mentioning to Bruce here, or to Batman here, it's like, well, we're gonna do this forever because you're the unstoppable force and I'm the movable object. We also have at some point where Joker is to easily figure out who is actually Batman, and that Joker mentions, not here, but somewhere in this movie, that uh, Joker says, "Does Dent know that you're going after his woman?" And because Joker, I guess, easily knows who Batman is. Like, I guess it's the obvious answer that no one else is to just question or whatever. So, as Batman is just pummeling Joker and just wanting answers, so uh, so we go on and we have, of course, Joker now revealing his ace up his sleeve, which of course is to be Gotham's White Knight, who is to be uh, like pushed down to both uh, Batman and Joker's level, and that Batman should go on and try to see where Harvey is, where Two Face is, and kind of know and kind of realize that things aren't all quite that resolved here. So we have it where Barbara and Dent are calling Gordon to tell him where to go, and Dent is saying like, come to the place where my life died, where basically his wife died. So Gordon is scrambling, of course, to this place. And so now we go on and we have Harvey that is to make it to see Dent. And we, of course, have it where Dent is to have this thing of like, well, like, I'm going to go after the thing that you love most. And he's kind of pulling a gun and kind of like checking which one it is. And so Gordon is to go on and on about like, hey, don't put a gun to my family. Don't put a gun to my family. And he's like, okay, I guess we have a winner here. So Gordon, of course, is to apologize to Two Face and saying like, I'm sorry for everything. And so we consistently have it where Dent is to mention about lies. And so we have Two Face that's telling Dent here, it's like, well, here's your son. Like, lie to your son like I lied. I lied to Rachel that she'll be rescued. So we go on and we all of a sudden have it where Batman is to arrive. And so now we have the conversation between them, which is a really interesting bit of dialogue here, where, whew, 2 hours, 2 hours of this. No wonder I'm kind of winded, because good grief, this is the longest one that I've kind of done in such a long time. Holy shit! Like, good God! And we're if I get this in 2.5 hours, that'll be the movie. Holy crap! But we're almost done here. Thank goodness. Man, is this just a long one. So, man, am I exhausted also at this point, because this is at the very tail end of my day. So, and I think my voice is going. Isn't that great? So, we have Batman going and saying that Dent was the best of them, and Joker wanted to prove that he could take the best of them uh, and go on and make him evil. So we of course have it where Batman is saying here to not turn the gun on this kid, that instead it should just be the three of them that are to really to be to blame. And so Dent is like, well, all right, like, so, like, how about you first? And so he flips the coin, and it comes off that he can shoot Batman, so he shoots Batman, he falls over. So now, of course, it's to, of course, Gordon, and that means that his son is going to get shot here. So Two-Face is to flip this coin, and while he's doing that, Batman goes and tackles Two-Face, having him fall to his death, and then Gordon is to rush to see if his son is okay, to have Batman barely hanging on and kind of holding on to Gordon's son and going on and giving uh, Gordon's son back to Gordon as Batman is to fall here. So Gordon is to scramble to see if Batman is okay, and it seems like he is. So now we, of course, have it where Gordon is saying it's like, well, like we lost. Like everything that Dent was to do is to now be undone. And so Batman is like, well, here's the thing. We cannot let Joker win. We can't not let him all win. So we have, of course, that Batman is to take the rap for those people being killed, because that's what Gotham needs him to be. And like he'll go and he'll take the rap for that, and Gordon's like, well, like they'll hunt you down, they'll chase you. And so we go on and have like Batman, it's like, hey, just call it in, because Gordon is to have these people out there already, and because they're just setting up a perimeter because they don't know really what's going on. And Gordon told that to Dent when he was still alive. So Batman is going on and running off, and so all the police officers are chasing after him. And so we of course have Gordon's son who's asking Gordon, it's like, well, hey, like, why is he running? And because we have, of course, Gordon saying it's like, well, because he can take it, because we like, because uh, he's the hero that we need, but not the hero we deserve. And so like he goes on and on and on that he's a silent guardian, a protector, and the Dark Knight, and so on and so forth. And so we of course have Gordon going on at Dent's funeral and kind of saying some just words about Harvey. But in The Dark Knight Rises, we find out that Gordon is to also have some speech prepared about the truth about Harvey Dent, and that is to have Bane reveal that at some point in the sequel film. But we'll get to that whenever I get into the sequel film. So hopefully I had covered everything, because I'm spent. I'm gonna get out of here, so that way I can fuse all this footage, because who knows if I'm gonna be able to fuse all this footage, because it's a very long stretch of dialogue compared to everything that I've ever done so far. So hopefully everything is good and covered, and whatever, I hope I covered all my bases here. There might have been something that I've probably forgotten about, because there's a ton of cutscenes via this movie, so I'm sure there's a billion of things that I should have gotten to, but I didn't. But if anything, if there is anything that is to have me completely forget about it, there's also going to be The Dark Knight Rises, which of course I can rebuttal and just be like, oh yeah, I forgot about this, or hey, I didn't mention this, or hey, I should have mentioned 25 details that I couldn't have been bothered to mention, because for whatever reason I didn't want to say that at that point, or whatever. I just want to kind of quickly get through this one, because I knew this one was going to take forever to do, but thank God it's done now. because I knew this one was going to be difficult, but it felt worth me getting all this out there, and me covering this and just be like, yeah, I really do thoroughly enjoy this movie, but I'm also just happy that I never have to hopefully ever do this again. Because it's just another one of those like difficult pieces and whatever. So yeah, overall, just like I think I said everything that I wanted to say about this movie. So let me know in the comments below if you made it this far. Let me know in the comments below about this movie, how you feel about it. Maybe you're a bigger Michael Keaton fan than you are Christian Bale. Maybe you don't. Maybe you hate these movies. I can understand people saying that at whatever point. Let me know in the comments below. Any number of things. So I'm gonna get out of here. Bye, buddy. Bye, buddy.